What does a real estate site, an e-commerce store, and maybe an internal tool for your company all have in common? On the surface, they seem completely different, right? But what if I told you there's a powerful, universal blueprint that connects them all? Understanding this pattern? Well, that's the real key to building modern web apps and building them fast.
Yeah, when you look at all these different kinds of applications, it's pretty easy to feel a little overwhelmed. A property booking system, a tool to manage employees, a site for selling tickets, they all seem to be solving totally different problems. So, you'd think that each one needs a completely unique approach, built from the ground up.
But here's the thing, that's just not the case. Underneath that surface level complexity, these apps are often built using a structure that's almost identical. It's a predictable blueprint that, once you really get it, makes building even complex apps so much simpler.
So, we're calling this the Universal App Blueprint. It's this repeatable, four-part pattern that's really the backbone of countless data-driven apps out there. Honestly, understanding this is like having a map for building pretty much any modern web app you can dream up.
All right, so what are these 4 parts we're talking about? First up, we've got the foundation. That's setting up your basic pages and routes. Then there's the data lifeline, how you connect to your APIs with services. Third is user interaction, all about managing forms and what the user is doing. And finally, and this one's a biggie, it's the mindset, making a crucial shift to thinking in data flows. So let's break down step 1.
First up, section 1, laying the application's foundation. Just like a house, every single great web app needs a solid structural base to build on.
Just look at this list for a second. What's kind of wild is just how universal these pages are. It doesn't matter if you're managing users or properties or tickets, you almost always start with this exact same set of components. You need a login page, right? The front door. You need a main layout to hold your navigation and keep everything looking consistent. You need a dashboard, a place to land, a page to list out your data, and of course, a page with a form to create or edit that data. This is the skeleton of almost every app out there.
Okay, so once you have these foundational pages, they're just kind of floating there. You need to actually connect them, and that's where routing comes in. Think of routing as the GPS for your application. It tells Angular which component to show when a user clicks a link, creating a totally seamless experience. And this points to a really common and frankly super smart routing pattern. You create one main layout route, and then you nest all the pages a user sees after they log in, like the dashboard, the lists, as its children. It's a clever trick to make sure that any page a logged-in user visits will always show up inside your main layout, which keeps that navigation bar and overall style perfectly consistent. So, we have our structure. Now we need to bring it to life. In section 2, we're going to do that with data. This is all about connecting the data lifeline, your API. Here is a critical rule that is going to save you so many headaches. Your app is going to make dozens, maybe hundreds of API calls. So instead of repeating that base URL everywhere, which is a total nightmare to update, by the way, you centralize it. You create a single injectable service, people often call it a master service, that handles all the communication with your backend. So this one, master service, becomes your data hub. It's the single source of truth for all data operations. You need to fetch a list of products, you ask the service. You need to save a new user, you tell the service. This way, all that complicated logic is tucked away in one spot, and your components stay clean and just focus on one thing, displaying information. Now, as you're wrangling all this data, you're gonna need to model it. So when do you use an interface versus a class? This trips a lot of people up, but here's a super practical rule of thumb. Use an interface to define the shape of data you're getting from the server, like a list of users, but use a class when you need to create a new object to send to the server, like when you're setting up an empty object for a create new product form. Simple as that. On to section 3, handling user interaction. So we've got our pages, we've got our data pipeline, but how does a user actually do things? Like fill out a form or log into the app. For forms in Angular, you've basically got 2 main choices. Template-driven forms are super quick and easy, perfect for simple stuff like a basic login form. But for anything more complex, I'm talking a multi-step form with tricky validation, reactive forms are absolutely the way to go. They just give you the power and scalability you need. The big takeaway: use template-driven for simplicity, but just default to reactive for anything complex. You'll thank yourself later.
And what about authentication?
This flow right here is nearly identical across every single application you've probably ever used. The user puts in their details, they click login. The app sends up to the API. If everything's correct, the API sends back a token. The app then saves that token in the browser's local storage so it remembers the user is logged in, and then boom, it navigates them to the dashboard. It's the same 5-step dance every time. All right, now for our final and I think most important section, the paradigm shift. This isn't about a specific piece of code. This is a fundamental change in how you think about building an application. This is all about thinking in data flows. Angular expert Manfred Steyer has this powerful analogy for it. The old way of coding, the imperative way, is like writing a script. When this button is clicked, do this, then do that. But the new reactive way, that's about thinking of your app as a marble run.
I mean, really picture it. Your data points are like marbles, flowing through a whole system of tracks and triggers that you build. When one piece of data changes, let's say a user types in a search box, that marble moves. It hits a trigger, and it causes other marbles to move and change, all automatically. Your job isn't to push each marble by hand. Your job is to build the run and just let the data flow. This brings us right to the core concept that makes the marble run work: derived state. Instead of you manually updating a filtered list every time a search term changes, you just define that filtered list as a result of the original list and the search term. It's a formula. When the inputs change, the output updates automatically. That's the engine.
And how do we actually build these incredible marble runs in Angular? Well, we use modern tools like signals. A signal is basically a value that knows how to shout, "Hey, I've changed." And that computed function, that's how you create the derived state. You can create a computed signal that just watches 2 other signals, and it automatically recalculates its own value whenever either one of them changes. It's amazing.
And that brings us to our final section. Now it's your turn. We've walked through the entire blueprint, from the basic pages all the way to this reactive mindset. So let's just do a quick recap. Here are the key takeaways. 1. Build on a standard foundation of components and routes. 2. Centralize all your data logic into one single service. 3. Handle user interaction with the right type of form and that standard auth flow. And 4, the most important one, shift your mindset. Stop writing step-by-step scripts. Start building reactive marble runs. And remember, this isn't some rigid, one-size-fits-all formula you have to follow exactly. Think of it as a powerful, flexible guide. It's a set of principles you can adapt and apply to almost any data-driven app you want to build. It gives you a huge head start and a really clear path forward. So, the final question really isn't for me, it's for you. You have the blueprint. You have the mindset. What are you going to build?